Happy Sabbath, everyone. I'm going to start out. My mom and dad couldn't have any children, so they were looking to adopt. And this lady at their church heard about that there was going to be a baby up for adoption. So my mom and dad looked into that, and they adopted me 3 days after I was born. I was born in Corvallis, Oregon. And they were thrilled to get me. And when I was about 2 years old, we moved to Texas, around the Beaumont area, and I grew up there. Um, my dad was always an elder, it seemed like, when I was growing up, and my mom was a piano player, my dad played the violin, and my mom sang. And I always was sitting in church with my grandmother and my great-grandparents. And then when I got older, I went to the Beaumont Seventh-day Adventist Church school, and I was about 12, and I took baptismal classes. And I was thrilled to be in them, and then after the classes, I got baptized. And I continued. They moved the school to the Orange Church School. I went there for a little while, and my mom was driving 50 miles one way to get me there, and that got kind of hard on her. So I went to homeschool. Well, back in the early 80s, the homeschool was not really heard of that much. And so I went there for a little while, and then in fourth grade, I went to public school. It was totally different than church school. And then we had a little church school at the Warren Seventh-day Adventist Church. I went there for a while. And then after a while, I went back to homeschool, and my mom was working, and my dad, and I was stay at home and do my studies. But then when I got to be, about 14, 15, I kind of stopped studying and started kind of going into the world. I go to church, but it's mainly for friends or boys. My heart wasn't really into it much anymore. But I was fixing, then I kind of got a boyfriend at 15, and I came to be promiscuous, sexual active. And then I kind of drifted off and stopped doing my schoolwork, and I even picked up a little bit of drinking. And then I broke off with my boyfriend, and I came back to church and started going to church. And I was preparing to go to the Valley Grand Academy and down there in Texas. And my mom and dad were leaving to go to Wisconsin because my dad was it was tree planters, and the work was taking them to Wisconsin, and I was supposed to stay with the pastor of the church. So I did, and I was taking my homeschooling, and I was to watch 5 children. And back then I thought, there's no way I'm going to have children because this is too much for me. But God had other plans. And so about April, and I stayed, and then around May, my best friend had a father that was a lay pastor, and I went to her house. Well, I was homeschooled, and my friend went to the Orange Seventh-day Adventist School, and her mom was going to be at work, and so I was going to stay with the lay pastor. And he had a little Debbie's route, And I didn't think anything about it. I was cool with it. And we went on the route, and he asked me a question. And I was 16, 17, and he asked me if I was a virgin. And I was like, why would he ask me that? I said yes. And then we went on the route, and we went there. There was a warehouse that we went to, and we went to the warehouse. And this guy was about in his 40s, and he was about 200 and something pounds. I was 17. I was about 110. And he pushed me up against the warehouse and started kissing me. He was a lay pastor of the Beaumont Seventh Adventist Church in the Warren Church. And there was no way I could get away from him. I didn't have the strength, for one, and then I was at this warehouse when nobody was around. And I got back in his van that he was driving. We went to his house. No, he still was around. And his wife was still at work, and his kids were still at school. And he had two couches. One was they both kind of like love seats. I was sitting on one watching TV. He kept saying, "Come over here." I was like, "No, I'm good where I'm at." He just kept persisting, and then he finally came over to where I was at. He raped me, and I was shattered. I lost my best friend. I lost my desire to go to the Seventh-day Adventist school. I quit school. I was finally told somebody at 2 weeks after this happened. And the pastor got a hold of my mom and dad because they were in Wisconsin. And they came down, and the pastor told me at that time that just you keep your mouth quiet. Don't say a word. We don't need you to say anything because we want him to do evangelistic meetings in the community. My dad agreed to it because he said we don't have the money to get a lawyer. So I left, and I went to Wisconsin with my mom and dad. And the guy was still a member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church for a long time. And I was afraid. I would stay in the house that night after that happened. He actually raped me twice. Because he took me to where I was supposed to go home, and then he raped me again. But so I just kind of hid as much as I could in my room or wherever. But the Lord finally helped me through that, but I kind of still wasn't back in the church. I tried to get married twice before I got married to Kim. And I called it off every time a week before the wedding. But I decided, I met Ken in January of '89, and we got married in March. I didn't know anything about him, but I was certain that everything was going to be good. Well, a month after we got married, my world was shattered. He broke my nose. My dad tried to get me to leave. I didn't. I went back to him. Our daughter came along, our daughter Kayla. Um, I was thrilled to have a little girl, but not long after she was born, I want to say maybe a month, he would just get mad. He hated kids crying and just shake the crib. And then a few months after she was born, he would grab her up and just smother her down until she stopped crying. I haven't talked much about this to anybody. And then our son Reuben was born. I don't know why, but he always hated Reuben. And Reuben wasn't smart enough for him. Reuben was not good enough for him. He did the same thing to Reuben. He would smother Reuben down till he passed out and went to sleep. I remember once Megan was little. He tried doing the same thing. I went to grab Megan away from him. He knocked me down on the floor and stepped on my head. When Kayla was about 6 months old, or even a little bit older, she threw up on the camper of the floor. And Ken whooped her for throwing up. And I'm not sure remember how old Reuben was, but he was crying. He couldn't stand children to cry. He didn't like children really at all until they were 2 or 3 years old. He took a cutting board after Reuben and bruised Reuben from his waist down with the cutting board. But God has brought me through a lot of this. And if it hadn't been for God, I wouldn't have been able to survive a lot of it. And he wasn't a good father at all because he didn't know. I don't know if it was because he didn't have a father. His father died at 9 or why he was so abusive to me. I mean, I've had belts after me, brooms across my back. But I hung in there for excuse me, for 28 years. And I finally, this year, I said I've had enough. But God gives you the strength to keep going. And God's there. All 4 of my kids should have been dead because of him cutting off the air and smothering them down. But God saved every one of my kids' life. And that's what I've lived with for the last 28 years. And I thought it was going to be a happy marriage. But I didn't let the Lord lead me. I was too in a hurry to rush to get married. But I know I've really been struggling through when Sam died. My son was killed, electrocuted, 3 years ago. I was angry at the Lord. I questioned the Lord. I blamed everybody for his death. He was a good kid. And Sam went through a lot of abuse by his father. I remember the last time, but I remember my ex-husband abusing him. He missed school, and he was about 16, and we lived in Bullard at the time. Ken found out that he missed school. He grabbed a baseball bat, and I knew in my heart I needed to run after him, because I knew that was something going to happen. It was a metal baseball bat. He ran in Sam's room, and took it and hit him in the legs with it. Sam at that time was probably 6'1", 6'2", real skinny. But he stood up to his dad. You could see the anger and the tears in his face because of what his dad was doing. And Sam, after graduation, he graduated as an honor student and from Brownsboro. And he couldn't wait to leave. He was tired of the way his dad was treating everybody. And that's why Reuben left too. And but it's really been difficult to accept Sam's death because Sam was on drugs, him and Reuben both. And Sam, before he died, he turned around and he was the only one clean on his crew. He raised a little boy when he was 17 years old. He raised his fiance's son, and he had a little boy himself. And I'm proud of him because he was wanting to get baptized, but he never did before his death. But it has really been hard on our family. Like I said, I was angry at his boss. I was angry at his fiancée for them being together because I felt like, well, if they weren't together, maybe he wouldn't have died. But God is still working on me with that. But He's given me the strength to keep going. Everybody says, Rachel, how can you smile at work? How can you keep going? It's because the Lord is in my heart. If I didn't have the Lord, I wouldn't have been able to keep the strength up to go through the rape, the abuse, and the death of my son. And I mean, it's been hard, but people at my job says, Rachel, you seem happier since you gotten out of the relationship. I am, and I'm still working on it, and God's still giving me strength. And what really made me decide to get out of it is this last time, almost a year ago now. I was standing there, and Megan and I were talking about Sam and his death. And we were talking about it. We weren't even talking to him. And Megan went to her room, and he told me, he says, you need to go to your room. And I looked at him, and I said, huh? You need to go to your room. So he followed me until all the way I was in the room, and he slams the door and says, you're not going to come out. And I opened the door. I said, what if I want a drink or something? He said, nope, you're staying in. So I opened the door all the way. I crossed my arms and I said, really? He came up behind me, pushed me, and I have a desk right here by the door, not a little ways from the door, but I fell into it, and it messed up my arm. My whole arm was black and blue. He kicked me. I was down, and he kicked me on my back, and I couldn't hardly sit or stand at work, and I was in a lot of pain. And they could tell I wasn't my happy self. And they said, what's wrong? And I told one of my managers, and he says, jokingly, he says, you want me to go beat him up for you? And I said, no. But another one wanted me to climb up the ladder that day, and I showed him my arm and what happened, and he says, you know what? If you need a safe place to go, I will move you out today. And he gave, Walmart has a 1-800 number where you can call and get somebody to talk to. And he gave me that number, and I called it and I talked to him a little bit. But the person that really helped me, I invited him to come today. His name is Curtis, and he was my assistant manager. And any time I needed to talk, he said, I will talk to you. And he said, you need to get out. You need to move on. And I knew I could go to him and he would listen. So God has put some people into my life that would help a lot of my coworkers, and a lot of my friends are willing to help. And I was surprised of all the people that were willing to reach out to me. But I want to tell everybody that if they're in that situation, get out. Don't wait 28 years and suffer for that long. I just want to encourage anybody, because I know that we're on the air. I just want to encourage anybody that is in that situation. There is help out there. There is people that will help you can turn to. And I did leave Ken once, and I shouldn't have ever returned. But the best thing out of it is that God has seen me through, and my 5 children are the best thing. And I would like to end this with a song. Megan, can you bring me my phone? It's up here in the back. I'm going to try this. Share all my sorrows. You said you'd be there for all my tomorrows. I came so close to send you away, just like you promised. You came there to stay. I just had to pray. Jesus said, come to the water, stand by my side. I know you are thirsty, you won't be denied. Felt every teardrop within darkness you've cried, and I so to remind you that for those tears I died. Amen. Her goodness is so great, I can't understand. Dear Lord, I know that all this was planned. I know you're here now and always will be. Loosens my chains and you hear me, I'm free. But Jesus, why me? And Jesus said, come to the water, stand by my side. I know strove to remind you that for those tears I died. Jesus, I give you my heart and my soul. I know without God I would never be whole. If you opened all the right doors, I thank you and praise you from earth's humble shores. Take me, I'm yours. In Jesus said, come to the water, stand by my side. I know you are thirsty, you won't be denied. Felt every teardrop within darkness you've cried. And I strove to remind you that for those tears I died. I just want to say the Lord is out there for you, and any trouble you have, He will help you. Thank you.